Hello, I'm Chrissy Seaton. Does my ego make me look too fat in God's view? Perhaps that's a question we should ask ourselves frequently. When we become egocentric, we consider only self, the me, and that gives us no regard for anyone else, and certainly no regard for the commandments or wishes of God that He may have for us in our life. So ego does dictate our identity to a certain degree, because it's our view of self, how we see ourselves. And while we have to have a healthy attitude about the value of ourself and the uniqueness of us, and that we're made in God's image, we certainly are unique and special, but there has to be a healthy balance with our ego. So we can have too much ego or too little ego, and that affects our ability to function effectively in mainstream society even. It affects our emotional ability, and most definitely it affects our spiritual relationship with our Creator. So what does all this mean? Well, too little ego is when somebody says, look, I'm nobody, I'm worthless, my life's a mess, it doesn't matter what I do or say, nothing gets any better, God doesn't hear my prayers, why should I even bother praying? You know, the ego is almost non-existent to a point where the value of self is just not there in that person's eyes. Or the inflated ego, on the other hand, is one of I know more than anyone else. I know what's right. I can take care of everything. I don't need God. I don't need to follow God's laws or God's rules. Those are for others. It's about me, not God. So too little or too much ego is not a good thing. Where we want to be is where we have a healthy view of ourselves, and certainly a healthy view of our divine mission on this earth. So what about Noahide ego? Well, let's take a look. We were given 7 categories of divine commandments, and they were reaffirmed and reinforced again at Mount Sinai by God through Moses. And that is where the Torah was given. There were 10 commandments, general commandments for the Jews, and there were 7 for the Noahides. So these 7 Noahide commandments, or mitzvahs as they're called, they equate to about 30 or so. So when we say 7 categories, each of those categories has some branches that lead from that. And and that's for all non-Jews, or Noahides as we call ourselves. Jews and non-Jews each have a role and a mission in life. Now that is decreed by God. That is, so we're predestined for that. And that mission or decree is for each individual. And God has created us, and He has created us in His image. So there, for a start, should tell us and reassure us that we are important, we are extremely special, and that we're a one only. So we are important to God, very important to Him. So I guess you could say that we each have a job description, and our job descriptions vary, and depending on whether we are a Jew or a non-Jew or a Noahide. So we could look at God as being the CEO, and His word is law. He's the boss. And we must follow his laws, And when we do that, when we do follow his laws and respect his divine decrees, then we are, how shall I say, submitting our ego. We're nullifying our ego to God. And that's where we want to be in our relationship with God. And so we, in our communication and in our respect and our understanding of our divine mission and our divine Father, then there is no place for ego, because God knows everything, God sees everything, and God hears everything. So there's no good puffing up and having a great big fat ego, because God sees straight through that anyway, and so do most other people as well. So when we are submitting our ego to God, that is the ideal place to be. That's what we're aiming for. However, when we begin to think that we can do mitzvahs that are prohibited to us as Noahides, they're not commanded to us as Noahides, nor are they logically obligated to us as Noahides. So when that happens, then we have an ego problem. When we decide we're going to take on extra mitzvahs that are not part of our job description. And that ego has now inflated. It's become extremely fat. And it's insulting to God, our CEO. And this is like saying to God, look, I think I should observe, for example, I'll use the Sabbath. I want to observe the Sabbath in the same way as the Jews do. Or I want to say the prayers that are specifically for Jews to say. Or another example, a man might say, look, I'm going to start wearing tefillin, putting it on every morning. You know, the Jews are doing it, so I'm going to start doing it. There must be something good in that, so I want to find out what that is. And we could go on with numerous examples here. But that fully inflated ego that we now have, it's saying to God, this is what it's saying: I know, God, what you commanded me to do and what you've prohibited me to do as a Noahide, but I'm going to do it anyway. I know what I want, and what we're technically saying is, it's not what you want, God, it's what I want for me. And that is wrong. That is totally wrong. So I think we should look for that balance. While we don't want to walk around thinking we're worthless, that is not the object of our creation. We are very valuable. We are extremely valuable to God because he has work for us to do. But by the same token, when we start thinking that we know more than God, or we know better than God knows for what is best for us, then that ego is now obese, morbidly obese, we could say. So I guess we need to ask ourselves, are our egos making us look fat and foolish in the eyes of God? So please let us remember we have a special mission as Noahides. Jews have a special mission. We work in tandem. There is decrees and commandments for Jews, and there are decrees and commandments for Noahides. And we need to, each of us, both Jews and Noahides, know what our divine role is and our position and how we carry it out. Noahides can carry out missions that Jews can't. Jews can carry out missions that Noahides can't. We all work in tandem. Please take care, and God bless.